Now we are moving with the last topic of the day, the panel discussion with Michaela, Gabriela, and Kate.
Okay, thank you very much. So while people are getting seated, so that really echoes what was told before, that we need to gather our forces and together we are stronger. So gathering between professional from the privacy is important. So thank you very much for all speakers. Hi, Michaela. And so I'm sure you pretty much still remember and are fresh with the great presentation of Kate about the code of conduct. So we have other two codes of conduct around the table. We have a representative from BBMRI code of conduct, Michaela, and we also have a representative from the cloud code of conduct, Gabriela. So what I'll start with is just I'll ask Michaela first and then Gabriela to very briefly in 5 minutes to present their code of conduct, where they are and what it is about. So Michaela, please.
Thank you so much. And hello, everyone. Due to COVID restrictions and the current lockdown in Austria, I could not come to you in person. However, it is a pleasure to be here virtually. So the code of conduct spearheaded by BBMRI is a code of conduct for health research. It is relatively large. It started back in 2017 when BBMRI, me and my colleagues started to get a handle on the GDPR, where we thought the code is a great tool. But very early on, we figured out it doesn't make sense to tackle certain issues, especially on secondary use of data, only for biobanks, because it makes a lot of sense to connect with clinical trials, with FPA, with patient organizations, with research in general. And that is data that is used for health research by and large. We knew from the start that the attempt is a very ambitious one, but at the same time we thought, well, reality will kick in soon enough and you have to start dreaming big and then figure out what are the key topics. Now, a couple of years later, with involvement from many brains, and I will later post the website of the code initiative that lists also the key contributors in the early drafting group, that it was key to come to a common understanding what are the most critical things. And similarly to what Kate said, we saw that it needs clarification, and for that the code is really a very useful tool. And the key topics that we have until today, and thanks to the stakeholder involvement that we had, is a clarification who is a processor, who is a controller in certain aspect, without telling anyone what they are, but giving guidance in identifying what is in which case for processing then a processor or controller. Then we do not make a statement on any legal basis because we see that the legal basis is very much up to the member states. However, we provide some guidance in identifying what is the appropriate legal basis. And to put forward an example, of course, in Austria, consent is the only legal basis there is, whereas in Finland there is even a biobanking law, and specifications and adaptations to match also in practice with the requirements of the GDPR are constantly fine-tuned. Now, the third aspect is when it comes to anonymization and pseudonymization, where we also want to give clear guidance how and where to find the appropriate tool for the appropriate purpose, making the clear statement that anonymization is always also context dependent and contrary to what was hoped for by some researchers, not a one-time decision. What is anonymous or deemed anonymous today might through technological tools not be deemed anonymous tomorrow. And where we are today, this is my last sentence, is that we started sections of the code to discuss with experts and expert groups. We are moving forward and aiming for public consultation finally next year, after having been in hibernation, or well, rather not being able to move as fast as we want to, due to a small thing that affects us all, the COVID pandemic. A lot of our legal experts who worked in kind on the Code of Conduct for Health Research activities were asked to work on COVID legislations nationally. And therefore, we see the importance, as has already been stressed by Kate, to interconnect, because that is also the I would say almost unforeseen aspect of the code of conduct as a tool, to interconnect, to make it a puzzle and brick piece for the users, that we collaborate with different code initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you. And Gabriela, please introduce.
So good evening. Thank you, Anastassia, and thank you, MyData-TRUST, for the invitation. So on behalf of Scope Europe, we're very happy to be here. A little bit of the fish out of the water, because coming from clouds outside of the health sector, but I think those exchanges are extremely important for the optimization of co-regulation and the data protection environment. So for those who aren't familiar, Scope Europe is the monitoring body and the secretariat of the EU Cloud Code of Conduct, or EU Cloud CUC. And the code, actually, our code has been the first to become approved and fully legally operational as of May 2021, so a little over 6 months now. It has been quite of a ride, quite of a long one, actually. But when I say fully legally operational, that means that we were approved, and we also received the accreditation. So as Scope Europe, we received the accreditation both in May. And the code is concretizing the requirements of Article 28 and all its related articles. So basically tackling all processing activities under GDPR. So it's a quite comprehensive scope there. And is it too loud? We're so unused to physical meetings now, so I'm not really sure if this is the right distance. It's okay? All right. Perfect. So again, Article 28 and concretizing, so all those requirements, all related articles, and also applying to all types of data, including sensitive data. So again, very comprehensive scope, which made this exercise quite complex, and it tackles all cloud services layers. And this is, we normally think of cloud, we think of storage. That's the classical idea, but the cloud industry is actually much more diverse than that. So the code is tackling infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service as well. So it was quite hard to harmonize such a diverse and highly innovative environment. So it's ever transforming. So to really put forward an instrument that can harmonize implementation there, and it's not any sector, is really a key enabler of innovation and growth across the entire economy. So it's a foundation technology. Everybody is building upon the cloud. So to have a proper GDPR implementation across this entire sector is really a crucial element. So I think we will tackle several elements throughout the discussion. So I will stop now, and yeah.
Thank you very much. Just to be clear, so do you already have clouds which are certified?
Yes, we do. Quite a few, and we're quite busy actually, so let me explain this. So the approval happened in May, but actually we had a trial period before, so there were actually services declaring adherence before the approval, and this was something that was discussed with the Belgian Data Protection Authority, and this was great. It was a tryout period, and now we have quite a lot of services already that declared adherence, and we have also different levels of adherence. different levels of compliance actually, but from the first level to the last, it doesn't change how much compliant you are, not at all. You're fully compliant if you go for level 1. The difference is how much proof you provide. So how many additional certifications, third-party auditing, and so forth you tailor into the declaration of adherence. So the idea is to allow the providers to really have a comprehensive compliance program and integrate whatever efforts they already have. So it's not something completely disconnected. You have certifications, you have codes of conduct, now you have this and that. So the idea is to bring everything together and have transparency so users can easily assess whether a cloud service provider is a certain service they are intending to purchase are adequate or not and safe or not.
Yeah. Thank you. So you may feel as a fish out of water, but I'm pretty much thinking that you do represent our aquariums actually, because you heard the discussion about the cloud.
Yes.
All health data nowadays are dependent on the cloud. So I guess that the other alternative to start assessing the clouds would be just simply to go on the Code of Conduct website and just to see if the cloud would be certified. So I also have a question to actually both probably Kate and Michaela. So indeed the interconnection. So there was also the question from the remote audience. So the healthcare sector now knows 3 codes of conduct, which are all 3 in preparation. So we have 2 here, EUCROF Code of Conduct, BBMRI Code of Conduct, and of course we have EFPA Code of Conduct. So can you just say few words about how those 3 will interconnect, interact? Aren't they duplicative somehow? What's the difference?
Well, duplicating, I doubt it, because, well, as I was saying, data processors, responsibilities is something different from data controller. That's why we're not actually going to fight, we're going to complement each other. So that we might give some guidance, for instance, as we do some support for the service providers more in the supplementary documents that would say, if you would need to assist a sponsor, which we very often do, then here is something that can help you. But the sponsor is, at the end of the day, the ultimate party to decide. So then if the data controller would need to decide in the sphere of health research, they would rather turn to the EFPAA code.
Okay. And how BBMRI code fits in this?
Very much in the same way, because our code is more for the data controllers. And when it comes to clinical trials, we will then obviously reference the EFPA code. And as over the last years, we have been with EUCROF, with FPA in constant exchange, we know relatively well where we can reference each other. And we've already committed, although we do not know every detail yet in the preparation, but we have reached a commitment that we want to be complementary and not contradictory to each other. And with that in mind, ongoing in the drafting, we also aim or have the long-term goal in creating more clarity towards harmonization. And the other aspect is really the power of the supplementary documents, because here the EDPB was also clear in its in recommending that the supplementary documents, if you reference them to, say, an organization in the website, not directly in the code, then whenever there is an update on the minuscule things in the template, you do not need to go through the whole process of seeking an additional approval. And that equally allows to ensure the complementarity in practice. But the first step is really have the commitment that you want to do that. And the 3 organizations mentioned definitely have that.
Doesn't that sound as a dream world for us? Like everyone.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess BBMRI lead data protection authority is Ireland, right?
We have not fully decided yet. Okay. We are considering Ireland or Belgium. France is already quite busy, but as was mentioned before, they are one of the most equipped. And Belgium, what makes it also interesting is to have the experience and commitment for research.
Thank you so much. I have maybe more general questions. So I think in terms of like what's the added value of the code of conduct, well, Kate covered it in her presentation. And obviously it's about trust. It's about also the fact that you don't need to redo the assessment every time and you gain the certainty. But on your way, and I really admire your effort because it's an effort that takes years, which is a real challenge. So what was the most challenging element that you would think about, but what was also the most valuable lesson learned, or something that you would, in your experience, really kind of specify as being of an added value? So if each of the representative of the code, maybe starting with Gabriela, can say.
Yeah, I think I already hinted to that. Actually, I wasn't so clear before in that regard. But when I said it was a long exercise, it was really a long exercise. Way before I got familiar with the whole thing, I came on board for the nice part. But people started the uCloud CUC back in 2012. So it was a decade-long effort that started with the commission, actually under Nelly Cruz when she was vice president back then, and she launched the 2012 European Cloud Strategy. And there was a working group there which was dedicated to draft a code of conduct, which was intended to boost cloud adoption, to create the necessary trust to boost the adoption of cloud technologies across Europe. And obviously, this was an exercise developed under the directive. And the middle of the way, there came GDPR, and a lot of adaptations were required and so forth. And there came the monitoring body, Article 41, which was something new, was not there under the directive. Codes of conduct were not so new, although there were not many, actually very few proofs of concept out there in the market. But the monitoring body, this new thing, what is this? And I think is really the key variable that puts together this whole ecosystem, that really adds value to codes of conduct compared to other, yeah, I'm really struggling with this, compared to other instruments. And first of all, I think it was an opportunity, so a long exchange with all relevant stakeholders, from the Commission to the data protection authorities and the industry, obviously. And on those working groups, you also had users and consumer organizations. So a lot of exchange, and there's the chance to educate each other, especially between the industry and the data protection authorities, to really understand like what is cloud and what are the toughest, the difficulties to implement GDPR, and that helps a lot. This is a crucial added value. And what I said, I hinted already before, I think the most challenging was to go for this comprehensive approach, to really be able to make a code that was future-proof, because cloud is always changing and evolving constantly. So to be able to put forward such a comprehensive instrument there was probably the most challenging.
Thank you very much. Michaela, what's your answer on this question?
Pretty much along the same lines. The key aspects are really the stakeholder engagement, and to take the internal as well as external stakeholders into account. With internal, I mean, in this context, the decision makers, obviously, EDPB, policymakers, national data protection authorities, those who are part of the drafting process, but also those who are ultimately the users, and for whatever reason are currently not able, mostly time-wise, to be part of that, but then in the public consultation process can comment and to bring clarity via a very strong tool that at the end of the day is still soft law and allows clarity for the community. And this engagement process is really not a sprint, it is a marathon, and we do not necessarily know when it ends, but we definitely know that it is worth it. And that most of us working in this field are very stubborn people is here actually not a bug, but a feature. And allows us to really see that every step of the way is actually already helpful. So the worst case scenario in this is obviously we do not make it to the code. But with every step of the way, we have reached a little bit more clarity to be helpful for the community. Some of my colleagues have done publications that clarify the roles of controller and processor. Others have started a relationship, a working relationship with national data protection authorities. And the combination of these efforts and the multiple stakeholder engagement, including obviously the ones with fellows who are equally on the path towards a code of conduct, is just very rewarding. And it is nice to stay with the dreaming metaphor, that, well, we have to keep dreaming about the goal, because again, reality will show us what is possible. But if we do not dream, then we just stick at the status quo. And that's something we simply want to get out of and take every step of the way to do so. So I'm an incurable optimist in that sense.
Thank you very much. Kate, would you like to add something to this?
Well, supporting that you need to stay lean to listen to the other voices. And sometimes when you have your opinion, you have to really define, as I was referring before, you have to make yourself smaller and define your scope. And as narrower you define the scope, it's not easier that you understand how to implement, but actually easier to explain how the people adhering should be able to apply all of those principles. So we have to we have to make the footprint not small, but to narrow it down to the manageable size, to see where your borders are for the time being. And yeah, well, interestingly enough, the cooperation with the authorities was not the challenge. That was very helpful. They are really, really supportive and advising and like mega nice for the time being. Yeah, well, very, very, very challenging was to come up with this solution for the technical compliance with this matrix, connecting the services and the requirements, to work out these requirements, like where do they really have to come from. And I do remember how we did this brainstorming exercise, sitting like for the whole day and then almost losing the mind. But we came up with this solution that we believe, that we trust, that we've tried, that works for the companies, really for our companies.
Thank you. So it's kind of, in a way, baby steps to the moon, right? Yeah, that's true. So maybe to take a few questions from the audience. I don't know if you have more questions from remote. So anyone in the audience would have a question? I don't know.
I have a general questions about code of conducts in general. How do you see I would say, the enforcement of code of conduct? First question, do you think that code of conducts will be really followed by the industry and by the different players? If yes, how do you plan to promote it? And second question, if yes, how it will be enforced? I mean, is there a legal issue if we don't follow it? What's the legal impact that it could have on your business if you don't follow it? Don't know if I'm clear enough.
Hard to hear the last question, Gauthier.
Yeah, the last question was about the enforcement. What could be the impact if we take the choice to not follow the code of conduct finally?
Yeah, cool.
Maybe you have more experience with enforcement.
Maybe a little bit. No, so exactly, that's what I mentioned before. The monitoring body comes here as this key player in the whole thing, and there are different, you can design the monitoring as long as you can follow the requirements and those not only of GDPR, but of EDPB guidelines, and also any additional requirements that your lead DPA might have. Of course, there's harmonization there between all the DPAs. You want to avoid forum shopping, obviously, so procedures for accreditation of the monitoring body are quite aligned, but you still have some differences here and there. Nonetheless, I mean, I think the accreditation process a lot of times in these discussions is undermined, but was extremely tough and actually much more work to a certain extent than the drafting of the code itself to really put forward a strong mechanism that really enables trust. And for the EUCROF CUC, as I said, there are different ways to set up this monitoring system. We went beyond the requirements, actually. We thought it was really necessary in the cloud environment for several reasons that I guess it's pretty understandable. So we go, for example, for an initial assessment, this is required. And we go for annual renewals. So it's really an ongoing due diligence, and we do in-depth assessment of 20% of the controls. Just a bit like the matrix, we have a controls, we call this a controls catalog, where we have practical guidance for the implementation of the code requirements and so forth, and examples and best practices there. So I think it's the monitoring body is the answer, and obviously codes of conduct are still new and we have very few experience with those instruments, but I think it's so much added value, and a huge part of it is the monitoring body and which kind of concept you build depending on the specific sector. I mean, cloud for us, it made all sense to build the monitoring body as we did, but obviously for health, for whatever sector, it must be tailored. So accreditation goes together with the approval, and it makes total sense because you are approving, you're going to monitor in a specific sector, something very, you need to have the expertise. This is one of the requirements, having internal expertise within the monitoring body to assess compliance. Therefore, I really think this is the differential, but of course the market still needs, it's solidifying its position. We are very happy to contribute because we think this tool has a lot of potential yet to be explored. So
I guess one of the consequences is that if you had your accreditation, you can lose it.
Yeah, of course. We are also, so I think once the Belgian Data Protection Authority made a quite good analogy there that said that the monitoring body is like the video assistant referee for football. So it's not like we are replacing the authority at all. We are being checked, and if we make any mistake, we have quite big fines as well. And we are, of course, I mean, it's really the procedures that were established are quite, they were very carefully established, and yes, as I said, it's not, yeah.
Okay, so we have just the time for two last questions, unfortunately. So the one on the chat.
This says, for Kate, how severe should be the committed violation of the code of conduct for an adhering organization to be excluded as essential?
Sorry, how severe should be what?
The committed violation of the code of conduct.
I mean, sanctions for not complying.
Yeah.
Remains to be seen, I guess. I mean, that's all the experience. I don't know. I mean, why would you consciously go for breaking the compliance? I mean, you would do, I would expect the best to comply. In fact, what the sanctions will be, it will be also defined in the accreditation manuals that are now under construction, let's say under development. We haven't yet got the accreditations for it, but we are supported as well by the CNIL. So we will discuss, we will see how severe it will be. I guess it will be reasonably severe, but also since we are really believing in living up to the higher technical standards, because I was mentioning that we put ISO requirements, even though not, you don't have to be ISO certified, but they are there actually. Every requirement is there. So if we find out, if the monitoring body finds out that the company is not compliant, well, it loses the compliance mark. I mean, what can be worse in terms of reputational danger? I mean, reputational mark.
Yeah. The impact on the image of the company. One last question from the room here. Otherwise, we have one last, very last on the chat now. Yeah. No, it's not a question. Okay.
There was another question on the chat to Kate as well.
Okay.
There was someone earlier asking if the requirements for certification for CROs could already be consulted, because indeed it takes time for organizations to comply. So as of when do you expect that the requirements can be
requirements themselves in the matrix, they're already there on the IT platform. So actually already, since the platform was already launched, I was not speaking about the fees of compliance, but I mean, at this point, I mean, anyone who is a service provider can already officially go to EUCROF, just go to the site, and there you can get one short entrance to the documents, access to the documents, generate your profiles, and check out what requirements apply to you. And yeah, you will see the whole of these technical metrics. So it's all available now, I mean, as of today.
Thank you. So I guess with this, we will
conclude. So thank you very much for everyone for attending this seminar. Thank you to mediators. Thank you to the whole of MyData-TRUST team for organizing also the event and making this possible. Thank you to the speakers for their very qualitative presentations. And as always, if you have any further question about GDPR and some other data protection requirements, so feel free to contact us. And see you next year, I hope.